So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this career coaching webinar of the Advanced program. This webinar is on career tracks in ATMPs. We have invited a panel of some interesting speakers who will tell us their own personal career story. And the aim of this webinar is really to interact with you and the questions you have. So the next slide, what is Advance? Advance is an innovative and focused learning program for future developers of ATMPs. We have a two-cycle program. We are actually at the end of the second cycle. So the Advanced program is reaching its final destination, and we had some webinars, a self-paced online course, and also 2 times a 5-day intensive workshop. So this one is the last of a couple of career coaching webinars. We still have 2 technical webinars on the planning. I will talk to you, and also one on EMA, and I will talk about this at the end of this webinar. This webinar will be recorded. The recording will also be made available via a YouTube channel. In a week time, you will receive a link at the end of this webinar with a recording of this webinar. Here on this link, you also see the former career coaching webinars that have been recorded and that you can still review. There was one on how to prepare for a job interview, how to optimize your CV motivation letter, one on stress well-being. We had another panel discussion on the hiring process. And then there was a last webinar that was 2 weeks ago that was speak about your skills. Maybe just something about the project partners. If we can go back to the former slides. Here you see all the project partners of Advance. And then I will introduce my co-host for today, which is David Morrow. David is a senior scientific program manager, translational medicine and drug development at Ackx, one of the project partners.
Okay, thank you, Merel, and good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for taking the time to join our latest advanced workshop and discussion on career tracks in ATMPs. I think, as we all know, the career path for the research scientist is certainly a challenging one, complex, uncertain at times, and is certainly not clearly defined, as you'll see today, with 4 distinct career paths. I think everyone joining the discussion today is very well aware of the challenges, so we have a nice opportunity to discuss some of them in more detail. In the field of ATMPs, however, there is a number of roles, or the number of roles available, far outnumbers the amount of available people and the right experts. There is presently a clear lack of people with the relevant expertise and the right training, which is something that offers great potential and opportunity for all of you that have an interest in this exciting and growing field. Opportunities in this field are set to rise by about 30% in the next few years, because the opportunities and the growth of this particular business of ATMPs will increase 30 to 40% as we see different products developed over the next 4 to 5 years. So the aim of today's workshop is to showcase 4 distinct careers of 4 excellent scientists, all of which have taken very different routes to today's talk, and they represent different experts in different areas of ATMPs. So the overall aim is to showcase that there is not just one route for the research scientists in their path, and that many different career opportunities in ATMPs in particular are possible. So we're going to hear from Stephen Sullivan, the Managing Director of Leuven Bio, Luigi Aurisicchio, the Founder, CEO and CSO of Ackx Biotech, Mangala Srinivas, the Chair and Group Leader at Wageningen University, and Vincenzo Mercurio, a Data Partnership Manager at BC Platform. So again, 4 very different careers. We will first hear firsthand about their different career paths and some of the challenges they have faced and overcome along their journey, something we hope that you might find interesting and informative. Later in the session, we will open the floor to questions as we try to pick the brains of these 3 advanced course lecturers. Yes, they're all lecturers from Advance, and one of our star students as they try and give advice to the early career professionals that you are. So I think the first up is Luigi. So the floor is yours, Luigi. Thank you.
Can I just maybe add, if you have any questions during the presentations of our panelists, we would like to ask you to write them down in the Q&A box. So not to use the chat function or the raise hand function. So we have time for all your questions and a discussion together with the panel after their presentations.
Yes, don't be shy. We want to hear your questions. Yes. So Luigi, floor is yours. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, David. Thank you, Laurent. Thank you, Merel, for the occasion of speaking about my personal experience. So it's something that I think it's useful for everybody who would like to have a career in this emerging field. Well, so basically, I can share my experience. So I'm a molecular biologist by training. And then I became also an immunologist because working in the field of mainly cancer vaccines as well as gene therapy and also the generation of monoclonal antibodies, of course, I was exposed to the immune system. So to try to learn what are the mechanisms to induce or to suppress the immune system. So my experience started several years ago in Naples. I'm from Naples, south of Italy. And of course, in an academic institution that was a very, very good laboratory for molecular biology. Starting basic science. So my experience was to clone and characterize transcription factors that were involved in cancerogenesis, in thyroid cancer in particular. Then at a given point, I had my gut feeling was to move from basic science to translational science. So to try to translate the basic science into a real product. And so I moved to Rome. In Rome, there was a research center of a big pharmaceutical companies that is Merck, Sharp and Dohme. And so at that point, I started a PhD, a PhD over there. It was a sort of industrial PhD. So the project was the generation of new gene therapies, vectors, and establishment of new type of technologies for gene transduction. And so I was exposed to viral vectors, namely adenoviral vectors, for instance, that now everybody knows for the use in COVID-19 vaccine, and DNA and RNA that now are very popular for everybody. But it was really early days. It was 1999. Nobody was really was aware about these new emerging technologies. So at that point, I was hired by the company at Merck. I started my group in 2009. I had a group of 12 people working in my group, and the experience that I accumulated in a big pharma was manifold, because on one hand, you have the possibility to run your own studies and with a good amount of money. So basically, if you have a good idea, you can basically translate your idea into a potential product. And as a matter of fact, from my group, there were 5 different products that from the idea went to a phase 1 clinical trial in humans in the States, mainly in the States. So it was a good experience also to understand how a big pharmaceutical company works. That is very different to compared to a small company or to an academic group. So there are, of course, big departments that interact each other, but often there are some islands. So, there is no an easy communication, especially when you are located in Italy or in the States or in Germany or in other countries. So it was not easier at that time. So what happened is that in 2009, and this is quite common in large companies, Merck decided to shut down our research site in Rome. So we were 200 scientists, all of us with a very top scientists with different expertise. There was a group that developed a first-in-class molecule for HIV. So I mean, it was very good group actually working at that site. And the decision was due to a financial crisis, but also due to an internal crisis of the company. So at that point, we were fired. At that time, I was 35 years old. So there were different options. So on one hand, to start a career at university. And that was not easy, at least in Italy, because you have to run through a very tough and very long journey in order to become to have a permanent position at the university. Second option was to move in another country. So I was indeed offered to move to the United States and continue working at Merck, but for familiar reason I decided to stay in Italy. Third option, that was the one I followed, is there was the creation of a company, my own company. And so basically me and other two people, we decided to found a small biotech that we named Ackx. Ackx means fast. It's a Greek word that means fast. Tachymeter, it's the root of this kind of words. And so we started working. In an early phase, in a very complex situation, because we didn't have a lab available. So there was a friend of ours that gave a bench in a hospital, and we were starting doing our research. Then at a given point, when you have a company and you wanna finance the company, you look for investors. So you look for venture capitalists or angel investors, and indeed we found some, but the conditions were very complex at that time. So we decided to change the model. We were just 3 people. We decided to convert ourselves to offer services to pharmaceutical companies and to biotechnology companies. And in fact, it was what we did. So we started working with a mid-sized Italian company, and then we moved to many other companies, including the big companies, so GSK, Novartis, Pfizer, and so on and so forth. So at the end of the day, the service part was very good because, of course, it was important to pay our salary, and the revenues are used to pay our internal research. And this was very important for us because in the following years, we developed our own pipeline of antibodies and vaccines. Our vaccines are different types. They are based actually on DNA. So DNA is the type of technology we use, and electroporation. That is a technology that allows the DNA to enter the muscle fiber and to induce a strong, actually, immune response. So we made a number of studies, and we brought from the mouse to the clinical trial a COVID-19 vaccine that was evaluated in a phase 1 clinical trial, was successful, but due to the fact that in the meantime there was the RNA, there was Pfizer heavily investing in this field, and so on and so forth, it was very hard to find money to move the program to a phase 2 clinical trial. So, but anyway, it was a very nice experience. So now we are 36 people. So we hire young people. This is, we are basically, on average, we are a young company. So the average age is about 30 years old. And we prefer the typical CV that we prefer is someone that has already an experience at the university, should have a PhD. So PhD is very important because we are a research-driven biotech. So we would like to have the mindset, the skills for a researcher to perform the type of research that we do, but also a particular attention to the translation, to develop a product. So it's some. These are soft skills in a way, not necessarily expertise, but also soft skills that you can learn over time. In our experience, as David was saying, what is really missing when you are very young is, of course, the experience in ATMPs, because it's a new emerging field. For sure, this would be the field of the future for cells, for gene engineering technologies, and so on and so forth. So it's very important to do something like Advance is now doing, because that experience is a plus in our opinion. The other thing that is very important is also to work in an industry. Working in an industry is not like working at university, in which you can try, different kind of avenues. You must be very systematic, because at the end of the day, you should establish an exact process that must be reproducible and available in the case that process will become a future product. Our experience as a company is not only in generating, potential products in human population, but also in the veterinary field. So we created a spin-off of Ackx that is called Evvivax. Evvivax is focusing on DNA vaccination and monoclonal antibodies in pets. Why in pets? Because it's an emerging market, especially in the United States. Almost everybody has a pet, has a dog, has a cat, and so they are considered as your part of your family, basically. So when they suffer of a disease, and in particular cancer, that is very frequent in dogs actually, you are looking for innovation, for new solution. It's not for granted that the human therapy is working in a dog, for instance. So it's something that it's now emerging, but often doesn't work. So we decided to test our expertise in also in the veterinary field. Then we created the Evvivax because we were looking for specific investors, and we are still honestly looking for investors. But this allowed us to also to create a very good network of veterinarian people working in the States as well as in other countries. And also it was important to learn for translation in humans, because basically the dog is much more similar to human rather than a mouse. Okay. And then we created also a third spin-off, third company that is called NeoMatrix. NeoMatrix is an innovative company that is generating personalized cancer vaccine. So starting from the tumor biopsy, analyzing the mutanome, so the number of mutated epitopes that are exposed by cancer cell, you can create a specific vaccine for that cancer, for that people. And so this company now is about to start also a program and go into a phase 1 clinical trial, hopefully in 2024. So this is basically my experience. So what is my suggestion? But maybe we can discuss also later on.
Yeah, we can come back.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Thank you very much, Luigi, for that fantastic overview, and what a journey you have been on. So so moving on to the next expert. I think if you move the slide along, who have we? Vincenzo, floor is yours.
Hi, thank you for inviting me. That's a very big pleasure for me. Yes, I was a student actually of the last advanced workshop. An amazing experience, I have to say, because of my life I did several courses or meetings, but the workshop was the best. So who am I? I'm Vincenzo Mercurio, and I'm from Messina in Sicily, where I study at the University of Messina biotechnology. I always loved the research, viruses, stuff like that. And indeed, I decided to do thesis on a pharmacology molecular lab. And there I got a fascinating about the molecular research. And this triggered me to move to do a PhD in Milan. In Milan, indeed, I won this PhD in molecular and translational medicine, and I work on an immunology field. And finally, I got to work on what I wanted, on HIV and viruses. But there I understood that my only way was the research, the academia part. I didn't see anything else, I had to be honest. So from that point, I did everything, was committed to the research. The PhD allowed me also to travel abroad, to do an experience at the United States at the National Institute of Health. And this was an amazing experience. There I met a lot of scientists, a lot of people like us, and I suggest to everybody to do a period abroad, at least 1 year, because this will give you a very important soft skills. Be able to stay with others, to speak English, to know other possibilities, to know other cultures, and this will open your mind. Indeed, this opened a little bit my mind, and after this period at the National Institute of Health, I started to see other field. I saw the clinical research field, honestly, because NIH is one of the most important centers for that. And I started to do some courses. I learned a lot about clinical research. That is a bigger field, honestly, than the research itself. Is everything. All the money are on that. All the research is focused on that. And I think the field is needing people. So I decided to study, and I got the opportunity to move as a regulatory affairs officer back in Milan at San Raffaele Hospital. A regulatory affairs officer in the hospital is particular. Is more a clinical trial regulatory affairs officer. And in there, actually, I did several things. I saw myself as a pivot between clinical trial actors, facilitating the study conduction. It is for all the clinical trials phases, from phase 1 to phase 4, also observational. It is included, of course, ATMPs, so advanced therapies. Indeed, I was on oncohematology and bone marrow transplant field, and the advanced therapies often are on this field, on the bone marrow transplant, because often they could be like cell therapies. So I'm here to give you the regulatory perspective, and you can see that from the research, from the wet lab, you can move to more like bureaucracy lab. So this was a very big jump, but I had to say whatever I learned before was very useful. Was useful to learn how was made the product, the legislation behind, and the regulatory affairs officer experience helped me to move very rapidly to a new position at BC Platform. I started like Monday as a data partnership manager. And this is a new position for me. It is on real world evidence and real world data. And I think ATMPs real world evidence fits a lot because it's a very important need today, because ATMPs is a new therapy. There is not too much real world evidence. As this is actually EMA requirement that more data are needed. And I think that all the soft skills that I acquired through my times are very helpful for my new position. And I hope this will give you some hint, some idea how you can move between the different possibilities.
Great, thank you, Vincenzo. One thing we will come back to later that you mentioned is this option of going to another country and what it can give you in your early career. I think it's well received. Quite a jump as well from regulatory affairs to data management, but we'll pick your brains on that in a while. So thank you for that. Next up, then we have Mangala Srinivas. How are you, Mangala?
I'm good, thank you. And I only have 2 slides. So my group works on the chemistry of nanotechnology-based imaging agents. We work across imaging modalities, so MRI, ultrasound, fluorescence, SPECT, and so on, both in the clinic and in the preclinical world, and also in the chemistry of the development. We develop these imaging agents for tracking cell therapies in vivo because we think you need to have quantitative, non-invasive biomarkers. So if we can move to the next slide. So I'm from Singapore, and that's where I did my bachelor's, and then I moved, or you clicked many times, or I don't know if this is automatic, but that's okay. So my career didn't quite go that fast, to say. So I started in Singapore, then I moved to the US, where I did my PhD at Carnegie Mellon University in imaging, which at that time was a new field for cell tracking. Some of my work was used to set up a company, CellSense, which unfortunately shut down last year, but it lasted a good long time for spin-offs. I moved to the Netherlands then, working at Radboud University Medical Center, initially as a postdoc, but then I started my own group there. And some of the work that I did there was spun out to Senya Imaging, which is a company. So the work that I did at Radboud UMC was the tracking of dendritic cell vaccines in cancer, because that group does a lot of cell therapy-based trials, also with T cells and so on. So that was, I thought, a really good place for me to apply what I had developed in my PhD with imaging agents. It was a really good experience. And of course, setting up your own group is a challenge. During that time, I became involved with the Young Academy of Europe, and I served as chair there for a couple of years. So the Young Academy of Europe looks at things like rewards and recognition, diversity and inclusivity, tenure tracks, and so on, things like that, which really affect academic careers. And I know some of this competitiveness is one of the reasons why people move away from academia to industry. Not that industry is not competitive, but not in the same way. I think it's a different rat race in academia, but we hope to make things better. So the work that I did at Radboud was spun out to a company called Senya Imaging. Senya is an Elvish word, like Lord of the Rings. It means to see, which fits very well with imaging agents. And at the moment, I'm still working as CSO of Senya for half a day or 1 day a week. But for a couple of years, I worked at GE Healthcare after I left Radboud UMC, because I really wanted to see what it was like to work in a large company, and it is a very, very different experience than working in academia. So that was a big change. But then I left GE and I worked full-time for Senya because things were going really quickly there. But then 2 years ago, I had the opportunity to apply for the head of the Department of Cell Biology and Immunology at Wageningen University. And so I thought, okay, I'll just give it a shot and see what happens. This was during the pandemic. So I was just sitting at home and I was like, okay, let's try it. And well, you never know, but it worked out. And I've been now professor there for about 1.5 years. It is, again, a very different experience, because now I have a much larger group and a lot more responsibility, while at the same time I have freedom somewhat to do the research that I want to do. And I still have my spin-off. So in a way, I kind of have a foot in both worlds. And I think this is really interesting. And for me, I find that a really good fit. One of the things I'm working on now in Wageningen, together with the Wageningen Young Academy, is greening our labs, because the amount of plastic waste we generate is really, I don't know, it's mind-boggling. So this has been kind of a very convoluted kind of career path that has a lot of countries in it, but also a lot of diversity in terms of spin-offs and large companies and different academic groups. But to me, what has always been consistent is that I've always been working on imaging for the optimization of personalized medicine. So I still see it as a continuous path, even though it really is quite separate. I'm happy to discuss this further and answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Mangala. I like the expression rat race. So it'll be interesting to find out later some advice for people that are still in the rat race and what other races they can potentially jump into. Thank you, Mangala. So next up we have Stephen Sullivan from Leuven Bio. Stephen.
Thanks, David. So instead of going through my career, I think I'll just talk to what advice I would give people who are in their 20s and maybe leaving college or thinking about leaving college with a basic degree in science or a master's degree in science. And I think in my area of manufacturing, there are many jobs. And I think one of the key thing to point out to people when they're coming out with a basic degree or a master's degree is that, not to undervalue yourself. The key thing is that you've got your learning in, you've got like critical thinking, and you have the basics of a lot of different specialities at your control. And the other thing is that you're relatively cheap for employers to take on. I think one of the key things to do these days that maybe your professors wouldn't have done in the past is rely on platforms like LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is very useful for two things. Number one, it's building your network, but also giving your sense, you can see other people who are like you, who've got the same degrees or experience, and you can see what way they went in their career. So, I think that recruiters for me can be a mixed bag. In 9 times out of 10, recruiters will contact you based on the keywords they see on your LinkedIn profile rather than where you want to go. So I think it's really good for you to do your own assessment of what options are open to you based on things like LinkedIn, for example. So, the way I developed my career was, does this interest me? And I started off when Dolly was cloned and pluripotent stem cells were derived, and I found that exceptionally interesting. So I gravitated towards that area. And then I would always ask myself, is this a place where I can have impact or can be useful? So there's an old saying attributed to Einstein is strive to be useful rather than successful. So you'll find a lot of pre-formulated ideas about what success means for people, and you need to steer towards a particular traditional career path in order to be successful. And that's simply not true. I mean, what a smart move is to start off thinking about what kind of person you are. What are your needs? What are your strengths? So, for example, if you need a lot of stability and predictability, you might be better off in a larger organization like a pharmaceutical company. Whereas if you like a dynamic environment and you're pretty good at dealing with, ambiguity, but you like, dealing with new challenges, you might focus on smaller biotech company like Luigi was referencing there earlier. So, I think, a key thing is understanding who you are, what you want, what your strengths are, then getting onto LinkedIn and seeing somebody, like look through the profiles and see somebody who kind of interests you and say, wow, that guy or that person has, has got a really interesting kind of career. I wonder, can I go that direction? And then I think the other point I would state is, reach out to people that you feel have a career that you want to emulate. People, generally respond very cordially to questions about, like I really like you've got into this area of manufacturing. How do you get into that area? And usually people respond very quickly and very positively, to those kind of inquiries. Recently, for example, a person contacted me along those lines, and she displayed her enthusiasm for my area, and I ended up hiring her. So ultimately, the key thing is, what employers are looking for is passion. They want, basically every job interview you'll ever go for, it's, can you do the job? Are you motivated to excel in the job and stay around? And will you fit into our work culture? So every job interview are those three questions. And, I think, you have to hustle. And the thing is that, in science and in translationary research, everything is evolving quite rapidly. So this is why, you don't have defined roadmaps for going in particular directions. But you've got, platforms like, well-tuned Twitter feed can really give you a good oversight as to what's happening in your field. And LinkedIn, where you identify role models for yourself and reach out to them. So they're the two things I would suggest. I think, entering into the advanced therapy market at the moment is, it's very exciting. You have a lot of opportunity, and it's just about identifying what options are suitable for you. And I think this is why ETRIS and the advanced course is very useful. The key thing as well is if you can add more than one arrow to your quiver. So for example, if you've got your basic research, your bachelor's or your master's, it's also good if you can add something extra, particularly in terms of administration. Doing a short course in project management, for example, can really set you apart. So that's my cumulative advice.
Perfect, Stephen. Thank you very much. Thank you all. I think that was a fantastic look at 4 different paths with some good advice. But before we start off the main Q&A session, we invite everyone now to start posting your questions. Maybe the obvious question: what is that one challenge that big challenge that you all faced and that you feel that the listeners today probably are facing it too, and how you overcame it and what advice you give to them? Just to start us off, I think we know some of them. I think we've discussed some of them, but it'd be great to hear again, maybe to start with you, Luigi. Is there one standout challenge you faced, and how did you get around it?
Well, first of all, at the beginning, because, when it's very different if you are an employee of a company in which there is someone, in which you have your salary, basically, and you have just to think about science or about doing your work. And different is starting a career as an entrepreneur, because really you have to focus on a different point of view. So you have to focus on how to find money, how can you survive, what is you have to be responsible of the people working with you, the safety of everybody. You feel the responsibility of families working, in your company. So it's a very different attitude. And to be honest, it was, especially at the beginning of Tagis, it was very hard because I remember I used to work, I had babies, and I used to work from 10 p.m. to 2 in the night. So, it was very hard period. And then afterwards, also when the company becomes a little bit more stable in the time when you have clients, you always have to think about clients. So you want to continue working with them because it's a way to continue and a stability of your company while you are looking to new opportunities, of course.
Yeah, thanks, Luigi. Mangala, going to you, when we talk about challenges, there's probably a lot of academics on the call today. You mentioned the word rat race, which I'm sorry I have to come back to because it sticks in my head. I loved academia, but I left it at assistant professor level because the word rat race, or I would probably call it the Hunger Games, where I spent most of my time trying to go after funding, where eventually it wasn't even about the experiments, it was just about writing one after the other. That's why I left it. Is there ways to overcome that? I know we can talk about funding all day, but what do you say to early postdocs that want to be independent and they're facing this every day and they're going, should I jump ship to industry now? Should I try something else? But they are still passionate about academic research.
So on the bright side, I think that the funding bodies are aware of this and they are trying to change this. So I know now in the Netherlands, at least, they're trying to give starting grants to new tenure trackers so that when you come in, you can automatically have some money to start your research with, which is really nice. But still, there's so much variability. In some universities, you are fully responsible even for your own salary, right? And this is extremely stressful because grants, your chance of getting one can be as low as 1%, even if you're excellent. And to have your house mortgage and your family dependent on that, it's like winning a lottery. You can't expect that to happen all the time. But I think the more sustainable way to do it, which is where things are happily going, is to base some of your income on education as well. So the teaching that you do, so you're not only linked to projects, but it is still competitive.
Yeah. Same question to you, Vincenzo. I mean, you make quite a jump from regulatory affairs to data management. Is that because you found the area challenging? You looked down the road and you said, okay, the path is not defined. Why make such a jump?
It is weird. I mean, I relate to the others, like also to you, jump from academia to others was like one big way to do. Was like academia, sometimes you have the feeling that if you fail, you fail. There is no other step, so you are not able to find funds or stuff like that. Well, I find myself on regulatory and other part outside academia. From the failing, you really learn a lot. You can still do a lot of steps. So this is my way to think, honestly. The jump that I just did from a regulatory perspective to data partnership manager is a big jump, honestly. But I found myself outside academia like a different field, like a field where you have to communicate a lot, you have to interact a lot, and this is very, very important. Sometimes you have to speak with different levels. Sometimes with study coordinators, sometimes with sponsors, sometimes with principal investigators, so with doctors, with the ethics committee. So I think that at the end of the day, it's not that that different. Actually, it's on a higher level, and I was curious to work on a company because on the past I was before on academia, after on a hospital, and I was feeling the need to be a more fast-paced field.
Okay, thank you. So Stephen, something you said before we take the questions from the audience really resonates with me. This idea of combining something in admin. Now, a lot of people in our career research scientists are looking to maybe do some type of business course, not necessarily a full MBA, but just some admin. Personally, I found that open a lot of doors because you think differently. You know, scientists are can be the smartest in the world, but you are parochial sometimes.
Well, you know, I think the key thing to realize is that the education sector is undergoing a huge amount of disruption, and that can. I remember one point in my career where, you know, I had several degrees, but in order to get considered by a pharmaceutical company for a position, I had to do 2 or 3 hour courses that were available on LinkedIn. So like, it was kind of like, you know, there's the things that the universities are teaching, and then there's the things that the employers are looking for. And it's, if you know what the employer is looking for, you can actually improve your chances very, very quickly by very, very short courses. And, you know, like, I mean, you know, this again ties into looking for role models on LinkedIn, see what courses they did in order to go where they wanted. And, you know, then, you know, it's doable and can be done. But I do think that, you know, the key thing is follow your interest. Like, if you're dreading going into work on Monday, you're in the wrong job or you're in the wrong, you know, culture. And it's important to realize that there's a lot of opportunities out there. Maybe, you know, you won't, you know, find the dream job in the first attempt, but you'll learn something by every attempt. And, you know, not to be scared of failure. failure normally brings extra knowledge, so you can retry and have better chance of success. It's good to join associations. It's good to network. It's good to go to conferences, see people speak and talk in different areas. Go to a conference that is you have no proficiency in. You'll suddenly be bombarded with a lot of new information, and you'll meet a lot of new people that you can network with. And that can be very, very useful to stimulate. Like if you're in a rut and you don't know what to do, I would start with LinkedIn, find some role models, and then see if there's a conference or two you can go to.
The question we get asked a lot by academics is, when is the right time if you want to make a jump to industry? This is a very common question.
Anytime, and you can always jump back to this idea of a static structure. It's not the world that is now.
So a question maybe to Mangala and Luigi, you don't believe in this if you've done more than 2 years in academia as a postdoc, you have some bad habits and you may not be right for industry. Would that be a false comment?
Well, no, it's, like Steven was saying, we have the different kind of people working with us that jump from one hand to the other, actually, to one side to the other side. So basically, our experience is the following one. So basically, if a student is working in academia, and then come to working in a biotech, and he learn something that is really key for the biotech in general, they have a lot of opportunities. In fact, we lost many key people that first came to us. They learn how to do a particular process or a particular situation, and then they were hired by larger companies. Of course, it was a big problem for us, but we were happy for them because it was a good opportunity for their career. So,
yeah. What about you, Mangala? For the same question. For Senya, if you're hiring for Senya?
Well, it's not only Senya. I'm also thinking of my time at GE, and I think it used to be that you were not able to switch back and forth as easily, but that is no longer the case. And I think a lot of people on both sides see it as an advantage now and not as a disadvantage as it was maybe in the past. But at the same time, I think you need to be aware that you develop different skills in these two careers, in these two trajectories, and there will be some mismatch. Particularly, I think, in people management, communication, these areas are treated very differently in industry and in academia, in my experience.
We have a specific question for you, Stephen. What advice would you give young pluripotent stem cell scientists with translational research background? Does it make sense to follow a PhD track? Or what other opportunities are there other than research?
Again, you can step into industry at any stage as long as you're motivated, you're enthusiastic. People will take an enthusiastic employee at any stage. The key thing is, if you do a PhD means that you'll be more expensive to hire, and you'll be expected to be of a higher standard in the lab, for example. So traditionally, PhDs, they say, is essential if you're to follow an academic career. But I think the vast majority of people that I work with, they would have PhDs or masters. I think the key thing is experience and a degree. So whether you do a PhD or whether you have a bachelor's or a master's with a few years in the lab, I think it doesn't really matter that much to most jobs. I think the key thing is that you're motivated to do a good job and that you're enthusiastic, and that I think there's a lot of things that can demonstrate that besides another degree.
There's a question I have, I think, for all of you. It can be a controversial one. The question of mentors comes up quite often in our business. I personally believe we should have several. Often your mentor for people is the person who hires you. that can be good, but it can also be bad, especially in academia, where we know all about the interests of the PI versus the independence of the postdoc. This is an old story. I would just like to hear from all of you about what your advice is on acquiring mentors. Is one enough? Should there be more? And how would you go about it? And what advice would you give people listening today?
Very complex question, because typically, mentors and supervisors in general are very jealous of their student or people reporting to them. So unless there is a particular situation in which I'm not okay with this guy, I would like to change, I would like to move to change my career or my type of work, it's very difficult in my experience that you change. Even in our company, if you start in a department, it's very hard that you change department, unless there is a particular need, of course, that needed for that. But in general, it's very good to have more than one reference point, for sure, because you can really learn skills, but also soft skills, starting from how that people can manage other people.
Yeah, I mean, from experience, sometimes it's better to go across the hall to a different department and even find a mentor that could help you in the more career track within a university. Mangala, I don't know if you have any views on that.
Definitely, I think mentors are very important, but at the same time, you need a mentor who will never see you as competition, because then you're defeating the purpose. So being in networks like Young Academies or other networks like that, I think is really useful, because then you can freely talk about even things like your salary and things like that with people who are not in competition with you. And that information is really critical.
Okay. Vincenzo?
Yes, I understand it's quite hard, but I see myself as a student. I really want a mentor that was talking me about my career tracks. And it's hard to find. I got lucky. I found somebody that was very caring about me, was like, oh, Vincenzo, you can do this, and the other. And she went against herself. So thank you to this person. But mentors are very important. And indeed, I found friends to talk about. And it's important to talk a lot with friends and colleagues. This is my opinion. They become your mentors in somehow.
Stephen, what's your solution on this?
I suppose it depends what you mean by mentor. If you're expecting somebody to lay out a career path for you, I think that's pretty rare. I think, this is what maybe my answer is you have to be your own mentor. You have to ultimately take responsibility for your own career path. And doing some critique of yourself about what you're good at, what you're not good at, and trying to identify an appropriate job that plays to the strengths and doesn't rely so much on the weaknesses. I've worked with a lot of really good people, and I've learned from them. But I would say that I've never had someone lead me along to the next step in my career. I've done that for myself.
Okay, clear. And you've all, I think, Luigi, Mangala, and Stephen, because you've all been in a position to hire people, and you continue to do so, either in your academic ventures or your business ones. Again, we have to ask this question. It may seem obvious, but advice again for our listeners about how to succeed in that interview when they come to you. We can never advise too much on this point. Maybe Mangala to start, maybe on that.
For me,
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, for me, it's really important that the person, often finding people with the right scientific fit is easier. What I really look for is that the person is a good personality fit with me and with the group. I want someone who is enthusiastic and who I think would be fun to work with. And I know that's a little bit of a bias, but in the end, if you're working in my group, you have to be able to work with me.
Perfect, that's clear. Luigi?
Yeah, of course, this is very important. But also sometimes it happens that the typical error is I've come from this group, from this academic group. I'm the best in the world. I can do this, and this. So this is not the right attitude. So it's very nice to exchange expertise. Okay, you are good at this kind of science, but we are doing something completely different. So what you would do in this case? So that's a suggestion I would give.
Stephen, you mentioned
I think there's one thing you can really do to mess up your career, and that's to lie. So I always look for evidence of honesty. If someone at an interview says, "I'm sorry, I don't know," I tend to give that an extra thumbs up, because it shows that the person is self-aware enough to know where their area of expertise ends, and they're also brave enough to be honest about it.
Okay, thanks. Okay, well, just maybe one final question, and thank you all for this fantastic input and feedback. As a PhD student, we all remember what it's like. We remember the first days of a postdoc, where things are not that different from when you're a PhD student and you're heading into your mid-20s, and you're certainly not a millionaire, and you're very far away from it. What advice do you give, our early career students who are at this position? They want to go and succeed in this ATMP field. What is that one piece of advice you'd give them all? Maybe start with you, Stephen.
I think that there's a lot of options out there than just academia. Yeah. And I think that, the world has changed an awful lot since your professors might have steered through the career milieu themselves. So it's important to realize all your options. Staying in a job where you're getting more and more frustrated isn't helping you or your team. I would say get out, make a change, fail quick, but move on. Like they say in business, fail quick and fail often. And by that, it's like not staying in something that's not working. So, for me, for example, there's a few times in the career where I was in either a culture or a job that didn't suit me, and I moved on quickly, and that there were other people who would have stayed in that position. And I think it really does make you less effective as a worker. Okay. So you have to be honest with yourself. Sometimes you move to a lab and you mightn't click, but there's other labs out there, and it's better to you and your employer to just be honest and move on.
Perfect. Thank you, Stephen. Luigi, that one piece of advice? You're on mute, Luigi, sorry.
Sorry.
No.
So basically, the passion moves everything. So you should really try to do what you like. So I can make you an example. So we hired a researcher, but at the end of the day, this researcher was very stressed by his work, because it was not like at university. We needed to produce results for a client the day after. And so at the end, we decided not to keep these scientists in our lab, and she decided, and now she's very happy to go teaching. So she's teaching at school, and she's so happy about this choice. So, passion is the first thing.
Passion. Thank you. Mangala?
I would just say that don't take rejection as a marker of failure, because rejection will happen many times. And also don't feel that any career step you take is permanent. You can change fields. You have so many options. You're not stuck anymore. I think you have much more freedom than before.
Thanks, Mangala. Vincenzo?
Be brave. Honestly, don't be afraid to move forward, to take steps. Follow the path. It's easier. Sometimes people are afraid of changes. Just do it.
Just do it. Lovely. Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate all this fantastic feedback. So just to close this out quickly, I think it's Roseanne. I think you have to switch over. Hi, Roseanne.
Hi. Hello, everyone. So I just wanted to very briefly highlight a few placement opportunities at the European Medicines Agency, because I think the regulator is also a path that you could consider. And especially with those placements, they're only temporary. So if you are not liking it, you can always abandon it after a while. So these placements give you the opportunity to get a good insight in the regulatory processes and ongoing research and innovation activities, and also be close to the decision-making process of regulators. So the first one, if you are employed at a European public sector body, you can temporarily work at EMA through the National Expert on Secondment program for a minimum of 6 months and up to 4 years. I have done such a national expert secondment, and it was really a great opportunity to understand how the regulators work. So during this secondment, you would be working at EMA office together with EMA colleagues while remaining in the service of your employer. So you would not be employed by EMA. And these SNEs, so second national experts, serve a dual role. They bring their expertise to EMA, but also take back to their home administration the knowledge acquired during this period of secondment. So it's a very nice opportunity. Another one that I'd like to highlight is the traineeship. So EMA also runs a yearly 10-month traineeship program at the agency's premises in Amsterdam. It usually runs from October 1st till the 31st of July. A development program is provided in these traineeships, including learning about the agency's mission and activities, but also attending regular workshops, participating in meetings, and access the agency-wide competency development opportunities. Here you would also get a mentor appointed, what we just discussed as being very important. And this mentor would be responsible for establishing individual learning goals, but also supervising and monitoring the progress of the trainee and providing guidance on career and development. And then the final one that has launched like 2 years ago is the Collaborating Expert Program, which is a guest program where EMA welcomes researchers into the agency to perform research in regulatory science topics on public health interests. And by doing this, the agency hopes to provide an opportunity for the researchers to gain first-hand experience in a scientific European agency and develop new competencies. And collaborating experts are salaried by their home institution, but hosted by EMA, either in person or remotely. So these are just a few interesting opportunities that you can explore. There's a separate EMA career portal that you can visit and apply for if interested. Then there was one other opportunity that I would also like to highlight, which is our TMEX Winter School. It's the Translational Medicine Explained Winter School, which is a great opportunity for PhDs and postdocs to learn more on translational medicine, but also to build your network and boosting your personal skills. The course covers a variety of activities, including a drug discovery game, and elevator pitches, group work, and lectures, and experts in the field from academia and industry are addressing essential elements of the translational pipeline. The course is now open for registrations. There are only a few seats left, so if interested, we encourage you to register quickly, and we will make sure to add the link to the chat in a moment. So that's it from my side. Thank you.
Okay.
Can everyone apply for that, or is it just those associated with Anitris?
No, everybody.
No, anyone, but it's really targeted to PhDs and postdocs.
Okay.
Yes.
So Merel, over to you to close us out.
Okay, we are now at the end of this webinar. This was the last career coaching webinar in the advanced series. We have 3 more webinars planned in November and in December, which you can see on this slide. Please register on the EATRIS webpage. As I said before, this webinar was recorded, and you will receive a link actually with the whole advanced webinar series on a YouTube playlist. You will also receive a follow-up email in which we have included an evaluation survey. So if you have time to fill that in, that would be great for us. Most of all, we would like to thank all of you, the panelists, David, Rosanne, and you, of course, for your attention, for your questions. We really hope you have enjoyed it. Please follow us on social media. And we wish you, for the rest, a very nice afternoon and a good start of the weekend. Bye.